Welcome back to another video, everyone. In this video, we are going to cover order types. We are going to break down different ways to buy and sell stocks and how the back end of orders work. So I'm going to go over different ways that you guys can actually buy or sell securities such as stocks, options, or any other financial instrument that you guys are looking to trade. And obviously how the back end of each order works so you have a strong idea of the trades. Right? So these are all the order types we are going to cover. So as you guys notice, it looks like there's a lot of different orders. Now, this may confuse some people because it's like, wow, I need to do something with each one of these orders. No, the only thing you have to understand is each one of these orders fall under a different category. So all we have to do is select one from basically each category. Select one from each category. Select one from each category. We don't have to select all of these orders. These are not all different orders. There's 2 orders for the first category, 3 for the second, and 4 for the third one. Right? Our job is to pick one out of each one of the categories and apply them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down each one of these orders and show you how they operate and how they work so you guys have a strong understanding of them, right? So let's jump to the first one. The first order is something called market order. So a market order is an order to buy or sell a security immediately. When I say security, I mean anything such as a stock, options, or anything that is a financial instrument, right? Market order will execute at or near current bid or ask price. I'll explain what this means. Market orders guarantee a fill. If you use a market order, it basically guarantees that you will enter or exit the stock. Now, one thing to keep in mind before I break it down is be careful when you use market orders. Be extremely careful, especially if you're trading options. Be extremely careful trading market orders, especially if you're trading options or stocks that have something called a wide spread. I'll show you what I mean. So let's break down the order flow with market orders. So when you guys are trading a stock using a market order or trading an option with market order, any financial instrument, what you have to understand is when you're buying or selling a stock, you're buying or selling to someone, right? So there's 2 sides of the story or 2 sides of the trade. The first side is called the bid. So we have something called the bid. This is the bid side. Besides the bid side, we have something called ask. The ask side and the bid side are representations of where people are looking to buy and where people are looking to sell. And remember, these could be people or these could be basically market makers. It doesn't have to be real actual people or real actual companies. This could also be market makers. So we have the bid, right? And we have the ask. Now, what happens on the bid side, this is where people are looking to buy. So we might have something like this, 327, and you might see 2. You might have 325, and you might have 1. You might see 322, and you might have, let's say, 4. Each one of these represent 100. So if you see 2, 2 represents 200. Right? 1 represents 100, 4 represents 400. It's increments of hundreds. Okay? That's the bid side. Now on the ask side, let's say we have 331 and we have 5. Let's say we have 336. Let's say we have 4. Let's say we have 339. Let's say we have 4. This is where people want to sell. This is people that own the stock or the security and they're looking to sell. This is where people are looking to buy. They're looking to buy the stock or option, contract, whatever it may be, okay? Then here, we have another price, right? This is known as, let's say we have 328. This is the last price. What does that mean? Okay, the last price means this is the last transaction the stock executed at. So basically, for stock ABC, this is what we see. We see the potential buyers, we see the potential sellers, and we see the last price. The last price means that this is where the last transaction happened. This is where someone bought and this is where someone sold. That is the last transaction. Now let's say I place an order. I go into the platform and I say, okay, I want to buy, right? I want to buy, let's say 600 shares of stock ABC, and I want to use something called a market order. So I'm using a market order to buy 600 shares of stock ABC. Now, if I do that and I ask you a question such as, where do you think, or what price do you think I'm going to get the share for? Right? Once again, I want to buy 600 shares of stock ABC and I'm using a market order. Now, the answer people have is either A, you're going to get it for 328, B, you're going to get it for 327, or C, you're going to get it for 331. Now, if you answered A, that's wrong. A is not the right answer. That's the first answer people think. People think this is what you're going to get it for. If you buy 600 shares, you're going to get it for 328. That's the last price. No, that's wrong. This, once again, represents where the last transaction happened between a buyer and a seller. You are looking to purchase. If you are looking to buy, you have to buy from someone that is selling. So who is selling? Is the bid side selling or the ask side selling? The ask side is selling. Since the ask side are the sellers, you are buying at their price because you're using a market order. Market order is saying that I'm looking to buy this option or this stock for whatever price the seller is looking to sell it for. And they're selling it for $3.31. So I'm buying 600 shares at whatever the market price is. This is the market price. So what happens is I get 500 from here, right? And then I get 100 from here. Because remember, I'm buying 600 shares. This 5 represents 500, 4 represents 400. I'm only buying 600. At 331, I'm not going to get my full 600. So what happens is I get 5 at 500, right? I get 500 at 331, and then I get 100 at 336, which leaves this at now number 3, 300 shares are left. And the last price goes from 328 to 336. That's how the order works with a market order if I'm looking to buy. Now, if I'm looking to sell, right, and I'm like, you know what, I don't want to buy, I actually want to sell, right? I want to sell, let's say, 500 shares. I want to sell 500 shares using a market order. Where am I selling? I'm selling to people that are looking to buy. So I'm hitting the bid. What is the bid at? It's at 327. So I get 200 from here, 100 from here, and 200 from here, which give me a total of a sell of 500 shares. So I'm able to sell 500. 200 here, 100 here, and 200 here, which takes the last price to 322. Right? That's the simple version of the order flow with market orders, right? Now, what you have to understand with market orders, and to go a little bit deeper, is obviously when you're using them with some stocks, they're not the best option because, like I mentioned, there's something called a spread. This is the spread, right? What the spread means is this is the difference between the bid price and the ask price. So in this situation, the spread is 4 cents. Sometimes the spread is wider. Instead of this being 331, this might be 381. So the spread becomes very, very wide. If the spread becomes very wide, let's say 50 cents, you end up paying a much higher price than you actually should, right? So that's where using a market order would not be effective. Another point to keep in mind when you're using market orders is if you are trading with a lot of size, let's say I want to buy or sell 5,000 shares, right? And on the bid or ask, there's not that many shares being floated or not a lot of people buying or selling or there's not a huge bid or ask. I would not use a market order to hit my full order. Why? Because what market makers do, and as I mentioned market makers before, is market makers are usually the ones who are on the bid or the ask. So the moment you say you want to sell 500 shares, right? So let's say I send an order to sell 500 shares using a market order. Now, a lot of people would think that I'm getting out at 327. But market makers' computers are so quick and fast that the moment your order goes through and triggers, their bid decreases. Their bid price, this bid and that bid go away. So this is the last bid that is showcased. So you actually get filled way lower than you actually anticipated when you are using market orders, especially when you're trading options, guys. If you're trading options, be very careful using market orders, because if you use market orders, you'll notice that you end up getting in or out at much different prices than you originally anticipated, right? So I'm not personally a big fan of using market orders unless obviously there's not a huge spread, or unless obviously there's a lot of size on the bid or ask, like there's a lot of buyers and sellers interested, there's a lot of volume going in, I wouldn't mind using a market order. But if there's not a lot of volume, right, if there's a huge spread, or if I'm trading options, I'm not a fan of using market orders. I'm a fan of using something called limit orders, which I'm going to break down. So once again, this is how market makers flow in, right? They're the ones who basically put these orders in, and they're the ones you're usually buying or selling to. So if you do use a market order, sometimes they destroy their bid in like a second or the ask, and you end up paying a much higher price than you originally would. Okay, now this is how level 2 looks like, as I mentioned. So this is me drawing level 2 out, but this is level 2 on its own. This right here is level 2. This is how it looks. So you guys can see we're looking at stock Sunworks, SUNW. Price is, the last price right now is 2.7, right? The bid represents the buyers, the ask represents the sellers. You can see there's a 7-cent spread. 700 people or 700 shares are looking to be bought at 270. 500 shares are looking to be bought at 2.7, and then you can look at the selling point. I'll break down level 2 more once we get to it, but this is level 2. We have access to this information. We have access to information where people are potentially looking to buy or sell, and we can use this to our advantage, known as reading the tape. And I'll break down how to read the tape once we get to it, but understanding this is extremely important, right? Now, the next order is something called a limit order. A limit order is an order to buy or sell a security at a specified price or better, right? So if you want an exact price or better, you use something called a limit order. A buy limit order can only be executed at the limit price or lower, and a sell limit order can only be executed at a limit price or higher. Limit orders do not guarantee a fill, but guarantee price. So market orders guarantee a fill, meaning you will get in or out of the stock, but your price is not firm. Limit orders say if you want to buy a stock at $2.77, you will get the stock for $2.77, right? So this is the breakdown of a limit order. Let's break down a limit order. So let's say we take the same example again, okay? We have the same exact example. As we have the same exact example, let's say I want to buy 500 shares, right? I want to buy 500 shares of this stock, and I'm using a limit order, right? If I'm using a limit order, another thing I have to put in is I have to put in the price I want the stock for. So I might say I want to buy 500 shares of the stock at, let's say, $3.23. Now, if I say I want to buy 500 shares of this stock at $3.23, do I get the stock? Do I get filled? Does my order execute right now? No, it does not. What happens is I now go in this point at 3.23, right? And it goes 5. That's how my order goes through. But let's say I flipped it and I said, you know what? I want to buy 500 shares at let's say 30. Same thing. My order goes here, 3.30, and boom, 5. Right now, obviously, when I'm placing this order, and you guys are going to see when you use real money and you jump onto a trading account, once I put this in, sometimes the market makers might immediately sell to me, take my, sell their shares to me, whatever the case is, because they see that the order went in. So it's not always going to hit the ask. Someone might just come in and sell the shares, and that may be market makers. But this is giving me a higher probability of getting in. Now, let's say I want to buy, I don't know, let's say 600 shares. I want to buy 600 shares using a limit order at 331. What do you think happens? I get 500 shares at 331, and then what's left here is 331 and 1. And then obviously the next ask price is 336. The last drops to 331. Now, what you guys have to understand is this happens super quick, right? Market makers are adjusting the orders up or down. Sometimes if on the ask you only see 500 shares are available, right? And you put it in for 331, the market makers might fill 600 shares. Because remember, they're the ones buying or selling from you. So sometimes their orders might increase or decrease. And you'll see more what I mean when we actually execute a real trade together. Okay, so now let's do one more. Let's say I want to buy 600 shares at $10. I put in a limit order to buy 600 shares at $10. If I want to buy 600 shares at $10, what price do you think I'm going to pay? Right? Now, this is another question a lot of people get wrong. People think, oh, I want to pay $10. I'm going to pay $10. No. What happens at this point is if I want to buy 600 shares at $10, it's going to go through the ask and get me the best price available. What I'm telling the system is the most I want to pay is $10. So the platform is going to give me $10 or low, or anything below $10. Right now, there's someone selling 500 shares at 331, 400 shares at 336, 400 shares at 339. So it's going to buy at the best available price under 10. So I take 500 from here, 100 from here. This is the most I'm going to pay. It will not allow me to pay anything higher than 10. That's how limit orders work. So even if I put in a higher price than the current trading price, it's still not going to fill that higher price. It'll fill the highest price going on at the exact moment, right? So that's a limit order. That's an order you guys could use or could look to, use off when you are trading. And kind of take it from there. Not saying market orders are bad, but you need to understand when to use them and when not to use them depending on the stock you are trading. Now let's go over the next order. The next order is something called a stop loss order. So a stop loss order is a risk management tool that helps you minimize or control losses. A stop is used to trigger a market order if the security's price gets to a certain level. Stop orders do guarantee a fill. So basically, if you guys take a look here, if we put a stop loss order here, the moment the stock gets below that order, our stock will automatically sell. So for example, let's break it down. Let's say we are looking at a stock that looks something like this. Right? We see an example that's showing us this, right? This is $10, that's $13, okay? Let's say we buy the stock at, I don't know, $10.20. We buy a share at $10.20. Obviously, when we place a stop loss, and I'll get more into this in the risk management section, when you place a stop loss, your stop loss has to be at a level that showcases you are wrong. And I'll show you more on where to put your stops once we get to it. But let's say in this situation, I put a stop loss at 9. Now, what this means is if or when the stock gets to 9, that will automatically trigger a market sell order. So it will sell my share for me automatically at the market price. I will exit at the market price. So as soon as the stock goes below 9, it will automatically send a sell order for me to exit the stock. It will send an automatic order that will have me execute the order on its own. So I don't have to be in front of my computer. I don't have to keep watching the stock. I put my stop loss, I back away, right? Now, even if I'm shorting a stock, same exact situation. Let's say I short a stock and I put my stop loss, right, above my entry point. Because remember, if I short a stock, I make money when the stock goes down. I lose money when the stock goes up. So if I short a stock and the stock does go up, it automatically stops me out and I am out of my position. Now, one thing that you have to understand about stop loss orders, and this is where we're putting more and more pieces together, is when you have a stop loss, right? Market makers can see your stop loss. So if I put a stop loss at 990, right? And this is why it's very important to understand stop loss is very important to identify critical levels, is when I put a stop loss at 990 and it's too close, market makers have the power to drive my stock down, take my stop loss out, take my shares, and then drive the stock higher. So I have to be very careful on where I put my stop loss, and I have to be very careful on not putting it too close to the existing price. So that's very, very important, and I'll dive more into that when we get to stop losses and we break down where to place them, right? So understand that about stop losses. Now, some people say, oh, stop losses are bad because market makers can't see them. But me personally, I think for anyone starting out, I think stop losses are huge, because if you don't have a stop, let's say you buy a stock at 1020 and you don't put a stop and you say, you know what, if the stock gets to 9, I'm going to put a stop loss. This is what happens, guys. Let's say you got in at 1020. You said you're going to put a stop, you're going to exit at 9. You don't have a stop loss. Now, what tends to happen is when or if the stock gets to 9, your mind kicks in, and this is where the emotions kick in, and this is where psychology kicks in. Your mind goes, oh no, it's going to go back up. Just wait. It goes to 870. Now you're like, oh man, I was supposed to sell it at 9. It's at 870. I might as well wait. Then let's say it goes to 7. Now you're like, oh man, I'll wait for it to go back to 870. Then it goes to 5, and you're like, okay, I'm going to wait for it to go to 7. Now you get stuck in a bad trade for a very long period of time because you did not sell. And I know it sounds very stupid where I'm like, I told myself I'll sell it at 9. Obviously, I'll sell it at 9, but trust me, guys, when you start out, selling it at this point is very hard mentally, right? That's where psychology kicks in. So having the stop loss keeps that discipline aspect in and make sure you actually exit the trade. And then at this point, you just become a hopeful trader, and you basically become a long-term investor in this company that, you know, tends to keep going down at times. So make sure you have a stop loss, and knowing where to put your stop is also very important. You do not just pick random points. And once again, once we get to this topic, I will break that down a little bit more. So that is a stop loss order. Now, besides a stop loss order, we have something called a stop limit order. So a stop loss limit order is also a risk management tool that helps you minimize or control losses. A stop limit is used to trigger a limit order if the security's price gets to a certain level. Stop limit orders do not guarantee a fill. They are not guaranteeing a fill on the order. I'll explain what I mean. So let's take the same example again. Okay, let's take the same exact point. Let's say I buy the stock at 1020. I put my stop at 9. Now with a stop loss, it triggers as a market order. When I put 9, right, it puts it as a market order. With the stop limit order, once I put 9, I now have to put a limit sell order. So for example, let's say I put $9, and here I also put 9. Now what this means is if the stock goes to 9, that will trigger my order, and my order will look to sell at 9. But now if the stock aggressively goes below 9 very fast, at times I may not be filled because of how quickly it went below 9, right? Now if I do put it, and I put it at, let's say, 950, which doesn't make sense at all. What this means is the stock has to go to 9, and then for me to sell, it has to go to 950. $9 is my trigger point. It is triggering the order. 950 is the point I'm asking the system to sell, which does not make sense, guys. I don't want to see anyone do this. No one should have their trigger at a lower price and their stop at a higher price. Why? Because it just doesn't make sense. If a stock is falling, it's going to keep falling. You don't want to put a higher limit price, right? It would make sense for you to put a lower limit price. If I put a lower limit price, what I'm saying is I am looking to sell in between here. If I say my trigger is 9 and my stop limit is 8, I'm telling the system that if it gets to 9, right, I then want to sell anything above 8. Then it'll maybe exit at 890, 895, even 905, whatever, but anything above 8. Right? But now another thing you want to keep in mind is if you have a stop limit order, it will not work on overnight plays. So if a stock gaps down, and I'll break down gaps, right? Let's say on Monday, the stock closes at $10 and I have a stop loss at 8, or not 8, let's say I have a stop loss at 9. Now on Tuesday, if the stock opens up and doesn't trade at 9 and opens up at 8, if I have a stop limit order and my stop limit is saying I want to sell at 9 and nothing below 9, my stop will not get triggered. But if I have a stop loss at 10, right, and if I have an order at 10 or an entry point at 10 and the stock goes to 8 and I just have a stop loss, not a limit order, it will trigger at any price because it broke 9. And I'll show you guys examples when we go on the platform. I'm going to process these orders with you in the next video so you guys can actually see how to execute these type of orders. Okay. Next, we have something called a trailing stop order. A trailing stop order is also a risk management tool that helps you minimize or control losses while locking in the upside. A trailing stop is set at a certain percentage or dollar amount below the market price. So basically, this is how a trailing stop works. So if you guys take a look here, right, this blue area or the blue line is a trailing stop. It's 10% below the entry point. What tends to happen is this follows the stock as the stock goes up and stays flat if the stock comes down. So basically it works something like this. So let's say we get into a trade, okay? Let's say we get into, or we look at a stock. Let's break this down. Let's understand a trailing stop. So let's say you buy a stock at $10, right? And you set your trailing stop. Now, when you set your trailing stop, guys, you can either use a percentage or a dollar amount. I can say I want my trailing stop 10 cents below, 10% below or $2 below my entry point, whatever the case is. Let's say at this point, I want to put it $1 below, or let's say I want to put it 10% below. That will give me a trailing stop at 9, right? My trailing stop is $1 below my current entry point. Now, what tends to happen is if the stock goes up, let's say it goes from 10 and it goes to 12. What's going to happen at this point, right off the bat, is my trailing stop will automatically follow me to 11. It will keep this $1 gap, right? Now, let's say that the same stock goes from 12, right, to, let's say, 11.50, right? Let's say it goes from 12 to 11.50. What do you think is going to happen to my trailing stop? My trailing stop at this point is going to remain the same. It is going to stay flat because the trailing stop does not go down when the stock goes down. It only goes up with the stock. It stays flat when the stock comes down. Now, let's say the trailing stop, the stock goes from $11.50 to $13. What do you think happens? Where does the trailing stop go to? And I want you to think about that. What price point do you think the trailing stop goes to? Does it stay flat? Does it go up? If it goes up, what point does it go to? Now, a lot of people would probably say that it goes to 12. Now, the reason people would say it goes to 12, which is the wrong answer, is because of this $1 gap. But what you have to understand is as this gets closer and closer, as this gap got closer, the gap is now 50 cents. So this is moving up closer to 50 cents. So this will be at $12.50. Not $1 anymore because that gap, right, is closing in more and more and more. So this is now at 1250. Now, if the stock goes below 1250, let's say tomorrow it goes to 1240, it will automatically sell for me. I will be out of the trade. The great thing about trailing stops is it locks in profits. So at this point, I have now locked in profits, right? Remember, I entered at 10. I made $2.50 on this stock because the trailing stop locked in my profit. They move up as the stock price goes up. They stay flat when the stock price goes down. Trailing stops are very effective, but you also need to know when to use them, right? They're not the best to use at all times. They're good to use sometimes, depending on how you're trading the stock. And I'll get into that. Like, for example, if you're trend trading, if you're swing trading certain trends, they would be good to use, right? But if you're trading a very volatile stock that goes up or down, trailing stops are not that effective at that point. So understanding when to use them is also a very, very important thing to know, right? So this is a trailing stop order, okay? Next, we have something called an OCO bracket. An OCO bracket allows you to place an order with entry price, stop loss, and profit point at once. So for example, you can have something like this. You can look at a stock and you can say, you know what? I want to buy a stock at $10. I want to put my stop, right, at 9. I want to put my sell point at 13, right? I want to put my sell point at 13. What this means is wherever the stock goes first, it will trigger that order for you. Now, obviously, with every order I've covered, you can change it as many times as you want. The only time you have to pay commission on your order, if your broker charges commission, is if and when the order is executed. So for example, if I have an OCO bracket and the stock goes to 12, I can always move up my stop and I can put my stop at, let's say, 11. I don't get charged any fee or any commission, depending on if your broker charges it, until it either hits 13 or 11 and the order executes. Now, I'm not a big fan of OCO brackets because what tends to happen on the upside, a lot of people get stuck on selling their stock or whatever they're trading at 13. So if this stock goes from 10 to, let's say, 1270, a lot of people are like, no, I need to sell it at 13. I said 13, so I'm not going to sell it at anything below 13. What tends to happen is, obviously, we're never going to predict prices perfectly. We're never going to know that a stock's going to 13. And then the stock, let's say, starts going down. And then a lot of people panic, they freeze, and they're so stuck on leaving their stop loss. And then sometimes they end up selling. So imagine being up 27% on a trade that you end up losing money on. That's very, very bad. So these are things that you're going to learn more and more about yourself as you trade and as you go through the whole psychology phase and as you put in real money, right? When you paper trade, you're not going to see these mistakes because your emotions aren't going to be there. Your emotions are going to kick in when you trade with real money and you see how you react. You see how you freeze. And these are real things that happen, guys. So do not take that lightly. Do not think, oh, no, I'm not going to freeze. I know myself. Trust me. Majority of people that start trading, they make the same mistakes over and over again. And the biggest mistake is the mental game, right? So once again, what some people do is, oh, it's at 9, they're up 27%, they let that same stock lose money. Where what they should do is maybe move up their stop and lock in some profits, okay? Very important to understand that. Next, we have something called a day order. Now we're on the final step, right? So this is where you select how long you want your order open until. So you have something called a day order. This is an order, this order is only active for 1 day. If the order is not executed the same day, it automatically gets canceled. So let's say I am looking to buy a stock, right? Let's just say I'm looking to buy a stock right now. I go on my screen and I'm like, or I go on my platform and I'm like, you know what? Stock ABC is trading at 11. I want to buy it at 10. So I put in a limit order, right? I put in a limit to buy at 10, right? I'm buying it at 10, but I put a day order. What that means is if this stock doesn't fill, or if my order doesn't fill today, it automatically cancels. So basically, if I have a stop loss and my stop loss is at 10 and it doesn't hit my stop loss today, I'm going to have to put in my order again tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. So if you are trading something and you do have a stop loss and you are going to hold it overnight or hold it for a longer period of time, please understand or make sure that you don't have a day order on your stop loss. Make sure you have something called a good till canceled order, GTC order. A good till cancel order is an order that is active until you cancel it. Some brokers have a time limit on cancellation, so obviously it's not going to be open forever, which it should not be. It may be open for 90 days, maybe 2 months depending on your broker, sometimes 30 days depending on the broker you're using. So a good till cancel order will be something like this. If your order does not hit on Monday and you have a GTC order in, your stop loss will still be there until it hits. If it doesn't hit for a certain amount of days, then it will automatically cancel. But obviously your stop loss for any order should not be open for 60 days or 90 days in my opinion. Obviously, as you're monitoring the trade should be done much before then. Next, we have something called a fill or kill order, which stands for FOK. This is a limit order that tells the broker to execute the order immediately and entirely or not to fulfill it at all, meaning kill it. So for example, let's say I want to buy 5,000 shares of stock ABC at $2.13 and I put a FOK order. The moment this processes, what it's going to say or tell the broker is I want all 5,000 in one transaction or do not fill me at all. Because what typically happens is if I'm looking to buy 5,000 shares at 213, I might get 2,000 on one transaction, another 1,000 on one transaction, maybe another 3,000 in another transaction, which may take 5 seconds, which may take 3 seconds, 8 seconds, whatever the case is. Sometimes a few minutes, right? Now, fill or kill order says, hey, if you can't get me 5,000 shares at this exact moment, do not fill my order. Do not give it to me. I don't want to be partially filled. I want all of the shares or all of the contracts or whatever you're trading immediately. Okay, that's what a fill or kill order is. And obviously, depending on what you're trading at times, using this would be effective. But the whole idea I want you guys to understand is you need to understand what each order does, when to use each order, and take it from there. I know it looks very complicated. It looks like there's a lot of orders, but I promise as you guys progress and go through this course more and more, you guys are going to see and get a better understanding of what to use, what not to use, when to use it, and when to use it. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to process the orders, how to buy, how to sell, and how to set all of that up so you can actually see all of these orders happening in live event.